Yep. And I'm going to go over to the, for the live stream, and I won't start it just yet. Put the backup for the recording. Yep, we're recording. Thank you, sir. Sure. So, Mr. Bernash, are you sure you weren't here on the second? I think you were here. I think we saw you there. There was somebody that looked just like you sitting there.
Well, I'm gonna say it wasn't me,
It wasn't you. We apologize.
because I was at the Fox that night.
When I went back and I looked on the notes, it showed you as being absent, but somehow when that got transcribed
somehow
into the
it-
minutes, it
yeah.
showed that you were here.
Yeah.
So you were being
So that
given
they
credit.
will change that on the,
Well, when we do a motion here, we'll motion to amend. So we'll do that. Is everyone here? I think. All right, I'm gonna start the, I don't know. She's not part of the committee.
Well, I know she picked up the packet, that's all.
She's not part of the committee, so. All right, I'm gonna start the live stream, folks. Before we get started with the meeting, most of you probably already know this, but if you don't, our colleague, Mr. Manton, passed away this morning. Very sudden, and we don't know yet a lot of the details, and we certainly don't know anything about memorial services yet, but we will pass that on when we do. But he was a really very important to the staff and to all of us, and he's going to be sorely missed because he was an advocate for all of us. He served on council, he served on committees, I mean, going back to, I don't know, 2012 maybe, something like that. So we literally just, he and I talked just yesterday about today's meeting and some of the things, tonight's meeting, about some of the things we wanted to do. So anyway, so if we could, I'd just like to ask if we could just take a moment of silence to honor Mr. Madden, please. Thank you. Just one other thing, and then Chairman Rowe will take over. I would ask you to be kind to Justina here. You may recall that she's new to the staff, and she sat in at our last meeting while Bree took notes, and Bree has since moved on then to her new role in the planning department, and so this is Justina's first time on her own. So talk slow and I said, hey, if she doesn't get something, just to stop us and ask us to repeat it and so forth. So if you would just kind of help us out here. So anyway.
I could use my auctioneer voice, but I guess I'll have to find Very good. All right, well, it's that time. I appreciate everybody being here. So, clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, Patrick McGinnis,
Present.
Paul Bernard,
with the present.
Dave Jenkins,
Present.
Jack Clark,
Here.
Andy Hope,
Here.
Molly Ronk here, William Monroe,
Here.
Dennis Root,
Here.
Steve Taylor,
Here.
Thank you. So first order of business is the approval of the minutes. Entertain a motion to amend to reflect that Paul was not here last meeting.
So then,
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. With that, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended. So moved by Jack, second.
Second.
Second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. And did we have any comment cards? Speaker cards?
No.
Very well. So with that, move along, kind of summary document that I sent out to the group last week for those who weren't able to attend. We didn't do anything that required a motion or a vote. But we did cover a lot of ground as far as identifying many of the assets that we seek to protect here. And then,
You want to address number 4 first, the update on the Better Together initiative? Just to do a quick update on that before you move into your memo,
sure.
just in terms of the most recent case. And there, nobody knows.
Got it for, what am I missing here on 4?
Number 4, update on Better Together initiative on the agenda. This is on the agenda for tonight. Number 4.
Yep. Informational documents provided.
The first page.
Oh,
First page of the agenda.
It's just a one sheet.
there we go. All right, now that I'm looking at the right sheet, music.
I just thought you might want to talk about what, you
It's
know.
like, I know I'm looking at Roman numeral 4, what am I missing?
Too many agendas.
Past, present, future.
So sure, so what,
Give the good news.
yeah, Steve Cross passed along in our notes last week is they have since pulled a motion reflecting political support or lack thereof, and a need to go back to the drawing board. So that is very encouraging for our cause. What I had shot out in the note was that there was another article that was calling for continuance of the effort despite pulling of the current proposal. So I'm not certain that this is the last that we'll hear of the initiative as we know it, but for the time being, they have pulled the initiative position, which frees us up for a lot of action as well, because there is no official ballot initiative.
True.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, it was very good news. Obviously, Mr. Stenger's departure, gave him a pretty tough blow. But I think even more encouraging is that Dr. Page's succession of him, who is absolutely opposed to this merger, definitely helps. And so when you read the articles, I'm sure you've all read all the different stuff that's out there. It appears that maybe that group is listening and saying, well, let's see if we can get more involvement and realizing that the error of their ways, perhaps that you can't do this stuff in closed rooms without public input and so forth. So as Mr. Monroe said, it's not over. It is a pause. But obviously all the municipalities, the municipal league, legislators in Jeff City, everyone is still going to be very diligent in terms of making sure that we keep the pressure on. But right now, it feels pretty good that maybe the dire predictions are not necessarily going to come true. So I think it perhaps maybe changes a little bit of what things that we focus on, perhaps a little bit, but that's up for you all to decide. So it was pretty good news for sure.
I think it's also a credit to grassroots involvement, because the pushback they got, all the presentations I saw, the pushback was 99% against. And
For some strange reason, and
Yeah.
I can't even believe it that they didn't realize they were going to get that kind of pushback.
Right.
How could they not? But
Well, that was such an arrogant, and that's the only way to put it, an arrogant attempt. It was just amazing. But I'm thinking about now might be the time to speak with one voice, and that voice I would think would be the urban.
the municipal league,
I'm sorry, municipal league.
and they continue to be the point people, if you will. you know, the gentleman that spoke here, you know, before.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to hear Dr. Jones when he comes to our next meeting, to hear how they're looking at it going forward. But yes, Pat Kelly, who spoke, you know, they are the drivers and so forth, so, yeah.
But Steve, help me out, they're trying to get the freeholder moved.
Yes, they're still moving to try to do that.
And that does not have to go on the ballot, does it?
The initiative that they proposed does have to go on.
Yeah, I think the Board of Freeholders does need to go on a ballot, I believe.
Okay, so let's assume it passes. That would preclude any effort like this past arrogant effort to abolish all.
Depends on how it's worded, but yeah, I mean, there's so many different bills that are, and Mr. Taylor can probably talk more about it because he's really tuned into this kind of stuff. But in terms of what's happening in Jeff City, and I mean, there's so many, I mean, my gosh, there must be 10 different bills or whatever on the floor. I guess the most recent one is, or the biggest one is that HJR 54 that we talked about at the last meeting. So the Board of Freeholders, and again, I think maybe what the Muni League is going to do is say, let's have the conversation. So it's not just gonna go back to the way it was. I think those days are gone. I mean, this is just my personal opinion. So something's gonna happen, you know, with the city and the county perhaps. You know, I think this has opened up the door for discussion. But the arrogance and this just, you know, we'll be damned and we're just gonna go forward and do whatever we want. That probably is DOA.
Yeah.
But there probably, you know, there might be other, you know, discussions about how can we do things differently. And I think that's what the Board of Freeholders might be looking at and say, well, let's do this. Let's keep it between the city and the county. Let's forget about, you know, the statewide vote, if you will. That seems to be the direction. Mr. Taylor, would you agree?
Well, I would say that the statewide vote, I think Better Together, as it is organized now, pretty much threw up the white flag when it came to a statewide vote. So they, and I'm sure you know the same, but they are going to attempt something. So it will probably not be a statewide vote, and if HR 54 ends up on the ballot, and to me, if we could vote and say, look, any merger has to be locally approved, we should really strive to do that anyway. But, you know, will the city be brought into the county? Who knows what's going to be proposed, but I think it's important that, to my way of thinking, that this committee moves forward with its work. I think, you know, right now we're speculating what would happen. I mean, last meeting we had, I said I was encouraged that, I don't know if anyone remembers, but I said I was more encouraged that it would be defeated, especially I think because of the Stanger situation. But that said, you know, there are going to be groups who want a merger. What that merger looks like, we don't know. Probably will not include a statewide vote if I were to bet on it, but we're speculating here. So to my way of thinking, I think we should take this opportunity to finish our work. Let's just get it done. Let's not say, well, it's over with, because you know, anything can happen, you know, a year from now or less.
Oh, they'll be back.
Oh,
They're gonna be back.
In some way, but I doubt that they're gonna do a statewide vote.
Agreed. Agreed.
But never say never, right?
I think that could be accomplished, a merger could be accomplished by incremental steps rather than one fell swoop, to where we could join the utilities and the police and the fire and that sort of thing, and do it incrementally, and then with the ultimate goal that the city comes back into the county. It should be that the city comes back to the county, not that the county dissolves to absorb them.
I think it also helped that John Gaskin ran afoul of the NAACP. And that really, you know, really ticked off the black community.
Yes.
So that was the second blow, I think, after Stanger or before.
They shot themselves in the foot a few times along the way, didn't they?
Well, they were arrogant. They didn't.
That's a perfect word for it.
That's what happens when you think you're the only smart person in the room.
Yeah, boy, there's no problem with that.
You think that money can buy anything?
You know, the concept and the discussion of this is decades and decades and decades old. This didn't just start in the last year or two. And so obviously the catalyst was the statewide vote. That's what got everybody, because no one's ever pursued that before, I don't believe. So.
Hopefully it'll be a wake-up call and people will take action.
So with HJR 54, my understanding is that once passed, looks like it's on the way to pass. Still needs to pass a statewide vote. Once that's adopted, that forces a local vote, unless superseded by another constitutional amendment. But then the Board of Freeholders, I think to answer your question, Jack, as soon as the signatures were filed, the mayor of the city and the mayor of the county had 10 days to appoint the board. The board then has a set amount of time, if I recollect correctly, I believe it's 12 months, to come up with a proposal that then goes to the voters in both the city and the county. And then they have to be voted on.
But do you know if it's a simple majority or is it a super majority?
I believe it's a simple majority, and it has to, I have to relook at the documents, so forgive me for some faulty facts, but it can't be in a general election. It has to be a special dedicated election for that purpose.
Yeah.
So, that's encouraging.
That's good to know.
So, any other thoughts on that? Very good. Now I'm looking at the right document. So last week we discussed, and I think I captured most of them, but if I didn't, I'm happy to add them now. The essential items that we're looking for protection. So I had listed parks, watersheds, zoning, housing density, topography, architectural standards, arterial road widths, streets, trails, a grand tree program, our community events, revenue streams, intellectual property, our lack of a property tax, and then our responsiveness of government with the police and the representation we have over zoning and local matters. Do we not capture anything there, especially from any members that weren't here?
You mentioned the NGOs, right, or the MSD, or not MSD, but the non-governmental organizations like TrailNet and stuff, you did mention that.
Yes. That's at the very bottom of the page.
Yeah, very good.
When you talked about arterial road widths, did you guys talk at all about Highway 109? That's where, I know in my ward, I mean, 109 runs through the whole city, really. That would be a big concern, you know, remember, what was it called in the early 90s? The green
The green belt.
The green belt, outer belt thing, you know, that they wanted it to turn into something like another outer, like the inner belt, outer belt. Yeah, and that's a very big concern. And the zoning was another big concern for my ward, but that's on there, so. Yeah, I would say that those are the two biggest things, according to people I've asked about, you know, what their concerns were.
The thing I hear from a lot of people about 109 is more a matter of safety rather than the width of it.
The volume on it.
The volume on
Yeah.
it, but it's the safety issues in those areas where we need to address safety.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody knows about the lawsuit that the city's a party to now, right? I don't know where that stands, but if that lawsuit is saying that the city was somewhat at fault for not having proper crosswalks or
That was what that
control,
girl that got hit.
one out by Babler
Yeah.
Elementary. That was 3 years ago, the little girl was hit, yeah.
And if you go down 109 to the southern end of Wildwood, I mean, it is just windy,
Sure.
no shoulders,
Plenty
up and down all around. So that would be just a concern. We're just seeing the increased volume. There's all these subdivisions being built just south of Eureka, you know, right there where 109 hits like W, and then there's 1,500 houses that are being built. Well, if they're gonna try to connect to 40, they have one way to go. And so, you know, it's just the continual growth in the traffic on
Right.
there. It's a big concern. So,
Jeff? Any other thoughts on things we need to add to the list of prioritization?
When you want, just let me know, and I can share some brief comments by the city attorney with regards to A through H.
Okay.
Yeah, because my question about that is, has anybody gone down this road before that we can best practices on some of these items, or if there's items we've missed?
Absolutely.
Because we know there's 3 metro areas, Louisville, Nashville, and Indianapolis. And were there any attempts made along these lines to protect a city entity?
It's a great question. Actually, that'd be a great question for Terry, because he's studying all those mergers. That'd be a good one to bring up next week. So, kind of just the goal of the meeting today, and then I'll turn it over to Steve to go through A through H and the recommendations we've gotten. I'd like to prioritize the elements as best we can. And by prioritize, maybe the better word is to organize into maybe tangible, intangible. I don't really have a preferred method, but then split up among the group, maybe investigating in more detail some of the avenues A through H that we might pursue with those things. So for example, Steve brought up last week some of the archaeological value of some of our watersheds. And I think that's worth further exploration by a subgroup of our committee in determining what those avenues of action might be. Similarly, whether it be the super HOA idea or the conservation easement idea, if somebody's passionate about those elements, segmenting those off and doing some additional homework on that so we can bring it back to the group and have a bigger discussion. I don't think we're all subject matter experts at the moment, but if we kind of break it up into individual groups, maybe we can get a little deeper in that. But with that, Steve, what did the city attorney have to say?
And we'll come back to the informational meeting. So, had a conversation. So, you all had developed this list, and it was as Mr. Monroe says, it was kind of whiteboard, just spitballing and throwing things against there. So, when I asked the city attorney just to kind of take a look at that list, he provided just some real brief comments. For instance, the archaeological study, further review suggested. I mean, just need to, to be able to opine on that would be understand what is it that we're talking about. Same thing with the utilization of the Clean Water Act or wetlands. Privatization of Wildwood, unclear as to intentions. Again, needs some more specificity. The super HOA, unlikely to succeed. Such an effort would require all affected property owners to sign the indentures agreeing to have their property bound thereby. So that's probably one that, given the city attorney's comments, would probably want to take off the list. A last-ditch effort to allow the city parks to be entrusted to adjacent may be prohibited by Missouri Constitution. Further information necessary. So that's one that initial review would say that might be a tough one. Utilizing conservation easements would need to be looked into. Succession from St. Louis County, unlikely to succeed. Would require county council to agree and put it on the ballot, and voters in St. Louis County and the city to approve, so probably not. Engaging, is it NPOs or NGOs? Is that a typo, or is that, what is that?
Nonprofit or non-government, it could be either.
Oh, it could be either. May be prohibited by Missouri Constitution. Further information necessary, so.
Now, did he say, I'm sorry, Steve, that surprises me about the NGOs. That might be unconstitutional. To engage NBOs to entrust resources, I guess.
As it's written, as we presented to him, his response was may be prohibited by Missouri Constitution, further information
So
necessary.
I'm wondering, and I'm am I speaking out of turn here?
No, sir.
Okay. So we're saying in this document that to entrust resources. Maybe if it wasn't entrust resources, maybe, I still think we ought to maybe communicate with NGOs, say, here's, not to entrust to them, but maybe to partner, with, get their input? I'm just
Well,
wondering.
keep
can
in
we-
mind that this is just a quick read.
Yeah,
by an
yeah.
attorney who does not have the benefit of this discussion.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I asked him if he could come tonight. Well, he's in Chicago,
Yeah.
attending a family function, so he was unable to be here tonight. Because he was actually scheduled to be, I wanted him to hear, Joe wanted him in the room there, so Joe and I were gonna have to arm wrestle for Mr. Young anyway, but we both lost because he's out of town. So we can bring him back. So understand, as the city attorney, he's going to read the words as they are on paper, okay? And that may not convey the actual intent of what we're trying to do. As Anil says, it may,
Yeah.
may
No,
be.
no, no.
Yes.
Right,
So-
and what I'm saying is that entrust resources might.
Yeah, that could be the hang-up right there.
Hang-up, it
But
could
there's
be.
a couple that clearly gives him heartburn that.
Which were
probably-
those that we should really, do you think are like non-starters according to the attorney?
Well, the ones that are non-starters are absolutely the super HOA, that's a non-starter. The secession from St. Louis County is definitely a non-starter, those two in particular. The last-ditch effort allowing city parks to entrust adjacent HOAs. If the HOA thing is a non-starter, he says that may be prohibited by Missouri Constitution. Good chance that that's a non-starter as well.
Okay.
So those three.
And then entrusting resources to NPOs also is a non-starter, but we might.
Not necessarily, and, yeah, I don't want to put words into the city attorney's mouth, but he just says maybe, but would require further review. So what we're just trying to do is just whittle down and say, well, let's not waste time on ones that we know are either certainly definite non-starters or ones that have a very slim chance of being accomplished in the time that we have.
So I was wondering, is it okay if I do say something?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering, maybe, since the attorney requires more information, does it make sense to maybe invite some archaeological experts to discuss with either the entire group or a subcommittee? Like, there's Archaeology St. Louis, who we contract with. Does it make sense to contact them? Does it make sense for a subgroup, or subcommittee, or to get TrailNet in here to speak to the entire committee and say, we don't want it, to get something of more specificity and see maybe if TrailNet says, well, there's something we can do here, or, that maybe this is an idea, to interface with them directly.
The attorney, in his, of that particular bullet point, the archaeological study, his comments were further suggested. So now you're getting into what the committee,
Yeah.
you all, what Mr. Monroe and the rest of you all, how you want to prioritize. So I don't think what you're suggesting is is outlined at all in terms of having someone here. It just depends on how you all want to prioritize the items that are remaining on the list, plus any others, plus discussing point number 6. So, which I'm just going to say right now, number 6 is extremely important, that we need to have a real good discussion about that one as soon as it comes up here.
Did he say the first 3 would need more information?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, the first 2 further review, and then he didn't understand, because again, it's 3 words, privatization of Wildwood.
Okay.
I mean, it's, the city attorney doesn't, he's not going to try to assume what is meant by those words. That's not what he does. So his words are unclear as to intentions.
Okay.
So we have to have him come here and then explain that further to him so he could understand where we're going with that.
It may make sense in some of these where it says more information is needed. I mean, given intent, there may be a different avenue through which we could still accomplish the same thing. So it may be prohibited by the Missouri Constitution that we entrust or donate or gift land. It may not be against Missouri Constitution for the city to conduct a sale of land. What does it look like? So that, again, things we don't ever want to have to think about, but if we had to do them to save our parks, I think we'd do them, right?
There's probably a pretty good chance that he would be available to come to our next meeting.
Okay.
Meeting on the 30th.
Very good.
Excuse me. What Steve was talking about with the trail net and with the archaeological people, even if we didn't need it, that would be something I think we'd want to do. We'd want to have information. We'd want to have a relationship with these people because we are a city of trails. And we are primarily a rural, more rugged area.
And the city does have a very good relationship with the TrailNet folks, as it
Really,
is.
yeah.
Yes, already.
I think that bears some investigation, Steve.
So, point of order question for you, Steve. In order to have a subgroup of this committee investigate it further, does there need to be some formal action, or can it be informal, it's
Yeah.
sub-quorum, right? So, okay.
No, you can break it up in any way you want, but ultimately, anything coming out of this committee comes out of the committee, not the subcommittee.
So if we
Mr. Taylor,
strike,
do you agree? Mr. Taylor?
I agree. I mean, if you're asking my opinion,
Well, you're the
it does
council
that,
liaison.
right, as a liaison, I think that would be within,
Yes.
that would
it's
be
within our
appropriate.
purview.
Yeah, that would be.
so if we struck D and G from there based on pretty certainty that he expressed, the only thing that I'd say is maybe we document his opinion on those two, as they were considered but advised against. And then I believe we're left with
The
further
prior-
details on C, as well as AB, E, F, and H.
I thought you said E was kind of a no-go too because of the HOA connection.
The last is.
Yeah.
Is that what the?
I think,
it
as
said?
it's worded here, last ditch effort to allow the city parks to be entrusted to adjacent HOAs. And again, his words are maybe prohibited by Missouri Constitution, and that may go to the point right above it about the super HOA, I'm not sure, but
Okay.
right now, it's leaning towards, it might violate Missouri Constitution, but.
What I'd ask him in that sense would be the same as the MPOs, right? What
Correct.
we're getting, the heart of what we're getting at is, could you give the parks to relevant parties that would take care of them because they're interested in them, whether that be an adjacent HOA or an NGO, NPO, with the intent that they are taking care of and preserving that with us no longer having ownership. But there may be different mechanisms. We may not be able to gift land as a city, but again, if we needed to sell it for whatever amount, an HOA doesn't have the capacity to purchase tracts on behalf of the HOA. I'm sure it's things that require votes, but,
And that'll be a good discussion when the attorney is able to attend the meeting and we can delve further into these things. Unfortunately, there's going to be time.
Along the lines you're talking about, many of the parks that we have, and Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have leased it from St. Louis County for $1 a year. The county wanted to dress themselves with the effort of maintaining it, so they didn't sell it, they didn't give it away, they just leased it to us for $1 a year. So that might be a way to transfer title or at least responsibility.
okay. So I have that as an I here, even though we're no longer needing some of our letters, just for sake of argument.
Yeah.
So are these any of these, I know Steve, you seem particularly passionate about the archaeological side of it, maybe the MPOs, NGOs. Any passion on part of the group to pick up a couple of these and do some further reviews so that we can have some intelligent questions for the city attorney here at the next meeting? Or groups?
It would be, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, it'd be my suggestion that pick 2, 3 at absolute most as your top ones and focus on those. I think that way, I think you might get a little bit more traction if you just kind of, instead of trying to prioritize the remaining 6 or 7 or however many are left or whatever, if you all just kind of focus on, agree on maybe what the top 2 or 3 are and kind of get started on that.
Well, I'm gonna
Would
say,
be my suggestion anyway.
I don't think private, I mean, I know the attorney said, I don't know what privatization of Wildwood means. I frankly don't either, so I just don't know how, does anyone see that as a very productive track, or if we're going to?
It was Mr. Werther who threw that one out.
And then he tried to retract it,
That's
but it
true.
stuck,
Okay.
so.
I'm not, yeah.
Like what, is there a gist of what it means? I wasn't at the last meeting, I'm sorry.
I think he
What
was
did he
thinking
mean by
something along
that?
the lines of like a St. Albans.
In what way?
partially privatized community. It was really a thrown on the wall presentation.
What does that mean, though? Privatized? I don't,
I guess no longer publicly incorporated,
okay.
but privately
They
owned.
privately own.
I don't know how you could do zoning around
No.
privatization.
How would you do that?
I mean, seeing how it was a developed private community, it's not recognized as a state.
That would be a very large private community, that would be 5,000 people.
On the surface, I think that's, you know, and again, the city attorney can only go by the words that are in
Yeah.
front of him. So, I mean, he can't assume what was meant, he wasn't here and so forth. So to say, I don't know what that means, I think that kind of gives us a clear thing that, and since none of us know what it means, I'm not sure there's a whole lot
Yeah.
of success, of a chance of success with that one. So you might consider take that one off the list, but that's up to you all.
Seems like there are only three that are viable to discuss, A, D, and F.
So I think E and H, if we break this into two, and we set it more broadly, is vehicles for non-government parties to preserve assets. And that could cover both those areas, whether it's an NPO, NGO, or some kind of a sale of it to interested parties. And then secondarily, use of the law would be the other piece, which would be Clean Water Act, archaeological study, and conservation easements.
Well, you know, couldn't B and F almost be combined?
That's what I'm saying, is
Oh,
combining.
Yeah, because they're really basically under the same umbrella.
Okay. So if I said more broadly, use of current law to gum up the works, in other words.
You know, what strikes me is, you know, we're trying to look at poison pills here, but I wonder, you know, the thing that's intimidating about Better Together was that they had purportedly 25 million to spend statewide promoting Better Together to the outstate, who would probably vote in favor of it, and then we'd be stuck. But is there some way that 89 cities and municipalities could combine into some sort of a pack that could also raise enough money in self-defense to, you know, along the lines of 25 million, to basically make it very expensive for them to try to win the day, because we'd be able to fund an opposite message. Is there anything like that, a PAC or something we could do?
Can't do that.
Really?
That was the problem that we faced from day one, is that you have a group called the Better Together Initiative that are not subject to the rules that we as municipalities, public entities are. So
Mhm.
we cannot do that. You know, I'm not an attorney or whatever, but our hands are tied in now in those regards. We can do other things, but farming packs and so forth. And again, Mr. Taylor probably knows a whole lot more about this than I do, but from you know, from what I've heard, we can't go out and just raise money and then have this great big fund to fight Better Together. That was
Yeah,
the whole thing.
for legal
They got
help and-
$25 million and we got nothing.
Yeah.
So,
But that's an interesting thought, though, because we weren't, and this is something we need to bring the attorney in on, we were not able to use money to fight against a ballot initiative.
Right.
What if we
Yeah.
raise money, or allocate money, for an annual outreach from here moving forward as to
I mean, I hear what you're saying,
the
but
independent Wildwood? I'm just saying, maybe we could throw it out to the attorney.
We can.
And say, we're not gonna be talking about any specific ballot initiative, but maybe we can have an ongoing, you know, annual, maybe standing committee are established to talk about the value of an independent Wildwood, or then maybe a group of us working, well, the municipal league will probably be
And that's what I'm
doing that
thinking,
too,
how that
but-
could be involved.
But maybe we ought to, maybe there's a loophole, and you get nervous with loopholes, right? But But maybe since there's no ballot initiative, but instead of fighting better together, we could just talk about the importance of municipalities. It'll be a pro-municipality PAC. So we're not anti-anything, we're just a pro-municipality, you know? I love my muni.
It's a question definitely to pose the attorney.
Yeah.
My initial reaction, this is just me,
Yeah.
is, there's really, really smart people like at the Municipal League and other
Sure.
people leading this charge. This has never come up. If this was a valid, way to go, I would have thought somebody would have said, hey, okay, City of Wildwood, City of Chesterfield, City of Ellisville, whatever, can you guys kick in 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever?
For
We're
marketing.
farming this thing. So, again, I'm just speculating now because of lunch, somebody would have thought.
No, I wouldn't say a
if this was
PAC.
viable and
I
legal.
wouldn't say a PAC. I'm just saying would Wildwood be interested in spending some amount of money on an annual basis, talking about the value of being an independent municipality and what that means to our residents?
And I think you're probably onto a good line of thinking. So
That's what I'm saying.
if we
is-
think about an informational campaign, we can spend money on an informational campaign about how great Wildwood is, and from a marketing standpoint, we can commit funds to marketing Wildwood as a great place to live. In that avenue, without directly advocating a PAC, it's probably likely. But however, Pat Kelly did say, and I looked up, they don't have a website yet, but the Municipal League has formed a PAC in and of itself specifically to counter Better Together spending.
Okay.
So they have a PAC that they're putting together. I do believe that the city pays a fee or a dues or some kind of municipal league annually, is that correct? The municipal league?
I'm not sure.
Some kind of participation, but
I haven't signed any checks to them directly for something like that. I mean, for specific events, but.
Just for membership.
But there may be, maybe it just hasn't come across my desk yet, because I haven't been here a full year to see a whole cycle in this role anyway. So,
To Andy's question or comment, and I think the important part is to speak with one voice, rather than 92 separate voices. And that's the key thing. I think at the first meeting I mentioned, I read a book about the Indian Wars a number of years ago, and the conclusion was that had the Indians stopped fighting each other and came together to fight the Europeans coming in, they may not have won anyway, but they would have got a much better deal. And that's, I think, the situation we're in. We rather than isolate some things, I think, figure out a way we can get everybody together. And 92 voices is certainly a lot more powerful than us.
If we're gonna be fighting this fight, let's say 2 years from now. Let's say that they bring it back 2 years from now. We could, from this point forward, I mean, we could say, once a year, we do a mailing about how we're stronger as a municipality, or just the strength we have as a municipality. And we're not fighting anything, we're just talking about how strong we are, because one of the things that we were struggling with was how do we, when we first organized, it's like we had a window of opportunity to reach out and to spend before it became a ballot. Why don't we just assume it's going to be back a year, 2 years from now, and we do one annual mailing on the value of Wildwood being a municipality, and we do that in perpetuity, like we do the Wildwood calendar, right? So that way, we're out ahead of the game, and we don't have to start from scratch when they come back 2-3 years from now, which they will.
Yeah, I think lack of knowledge and misunderstanding of this whole issue has been probably one of the biggest problems. People just they didn't understand. Everybody thinks, and probably no one in this room would disagree, that the concept of bringing the two together has good merit.
Yeah,
in
face
many
value,
ways.
yeah.
But people don't understand the details, the devil's in the details, right? So, an informational campaign about the benefits of being a municipality and such.
And you could actually kind of add on to the fact that Wildwood was just named the best place in the state to raise a family.
Exactly.
So we could use that as part of the marketing impetus to build on. And
So we're ready 2 years from now.
right. I mean, we just capitalize on the fact that it's already been established that this is a good place to live. Now, how do we keep it a good place to live and raise your family?
The Wildwood was formed for one reason, and one reason alone, and that's zoning. If it wasn't for malicious zoning on the part of Westfall and St. Louis County, Wildwood would not exist today. And that, because these small streets and small bridges can't take a throng of traffic through, like Molly was saying with 109. It was never designed to handle that kind of traffic and to be a throughfare and that sort of thing. And we kind of want to keep that. And I think everybody who lives in Wildwood understands the value of zoning.
So with that, it's a perfect transition into our informational campaign. So the idea was raised, I'm not going to take credit for it, is actually one of our residents that was listening to the meeting and didn't speak last meeting, but afterward caught me and pulled me aside. And she said, you know, one of the ways to get around the prohibition of taking a stand or making a statement is to ask a question. And she basically, in not so many words, suggested a push-pull of sorts to the city to ask the residents to rank what they value the most among a subset of things. What do you value most about Wildwood? And potentially have listening posts at some of our events to have residents fill out surveys and we solicit feedback within a designed framework of what people value about Wildwood, and then publish those results within one of our marketing initiatives publicly to the city of here's what you told us you value much about Wildwood. I think just on the face of it being very informational for all of us and the council, there's merit there. But in addition to the fact that it gets people kind of critically thinking about what it is they love about the city, and kind of reinforces that standpoint. So didn't know what the thoughts there were about that.
If you think about this, if this HJR 54 passes, at least we're protected from the uninformed outstate from affecting a local election. So then our marketing efforts are effective, because now we got to speak to the people that may be asked to vote on this issue. So that makes more sense now if HJR 54 passes, that a local marketing campaign has value. But it would be swamped if the outstate could vote in a general election, and it would, at that point, I don't think it would be very wise use of funds.
So I agree with Mr. Clark, or what he earlier said was, you know, the number one reason Wildwood became what it is today had all to do with planning and zoning. It's all about zoning, right, and how we control. And to me, that is the number one area that we want to try and protect, because it is the number one, I think, issue that is everybody is fearful about. I don't know if we agree or disagree with that. So how, you know, all these informational things are all really good, but the steps that we possibly can take to protect the zoning, planning and zoning piece are, to me, that is the number one thing. I think that's just my feeling to go after. Some of the things I think that I had thought about is, you know, the watershed protection, obviously the natural settings of Wildwood is our asset. That's the things we want to protect. So trying to go after that, you know, watersheds obviously is one, parks is another. There is an organization called Missouri Stream Team, and that's it's a private organization. I think that's actually supported by the Missouri Conservation Department, and I think there may be some good experts in there that may give us some insight as to, because that's what their primary charter is to protect watersheds and streams. And we're made up of many. Maybe there's some guidance we can get from them to help us think of other things beyond on the watershed area that we can.
Pat, you're now the co-chair of Steve's exploratory committee of the.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I didn't know I had coachability.
Voluntold, is that what we call that in the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
No, it's good. That's a great point. But no, I think some of this takes a little bit more in detail work, so I would appreciate anybody that wants to take point on investigating some of these, so if you don't mind reaching out.
Yeah, no, it's an area we'll acknowledge about.
So do you want me to go ahead and contact the archaeological organization that we deal with and just quote? So are we at the point where we just sort of want organically, I can contact Archaeological STL and say that we're looking into this and make an initial contact there, and he can make an initial contact with Stream Team?
I think that's valuable. I
POC
do.
work there?
Because I think it's gonna allow us to ask more informed questions
Yeah, right.
and have a little bit more informed
I
discussion.
mean, they have
about what our
biologists
options
on staff, and I mean, they have, you know, people that actually can bring, you know, real, true intellect to these types of issues that we can maybe leverage to protect, you know, and instill the protections we want to.
Because, you know, with the guns not at our head anymore, I think we've got more time to look at things like this and to at least become more informed and make a better, more informed decision what to do down the road.
And certainly feel free to invite, if it's okay with you, you know, invite folks to come and talk to our group
Absolutely.
here. You know.
Like the Missouri Department of Conservation.
True,
Yeah.
yeah.
Would be,
Now, they are a state organization.
Right.
So I'm sure they're gonna be, you know, limited as to, well, not limited, but, you know.
I have the email address, so between now and the next meeting, I can make an inquiry of Archaeological St. Louis, the people we contract with, and just let them know that this has come up at the Preservation Wildwood, or the Wildwood Preservation Committee. And I volunteer to do that if you guys want me to do that. I don't know if that takes a motion or if just,
No, fairly informal.
I'll do that then between now and the next meeting.
Great. So Steve will take that, that'll take Stream Team.
Well, I really liked your idea about setting up a listening booth somewhere in these concerts and things and say, gee, you know, what do you like about Wildwood and that sort of thing. I think even Wildwood as a city would like to have that information.
Well, let's talk about that, which is what I wanted, you know, that our kickoff for all the events is tomorrow night. So starting tomorrow night, it's like almost every weekend, there's something going on. So if there is a time to start getting this stuff out, or getting these listening posts, or getting these questionnaires. I mean, our first concert is tomorrow night, you know, right out here. And then we've got the farmer's market that starts here at the end of this month in June. You know, I mean, there are multiple events. There's an event at Creveport Lake that we're participating in. There's another concert. I mean, things are just gonna really be blowing and going, you know, between now and the end of August. So the sooner that you all, my suggestion to you all, is just a suggestion, is to develop whatever marketing pieces, questionnaires, whatever you want to do, but things are happening right now, so every week that goes by is a week that we miss an opportunity to engage our residents.
not like the emails, you know, that come from the city, like the updates of just attaching a survey,
I'm sorry?
attaching an electronic survey.
Or a link to
you
a
know,
survey.
Yeah, like a Survey
Right.
Monkey.
Yeah, that's what I was
Right.
thinking also.
You know, you'll hit every single person that gets those updates, you know, from the city.
We have to check and see. There are some social media guidelines that we need to follow, that we just can't use those email addresses and those databases that we have just for sending things out. So, in fact, the Administration and Public Works Committee, and Julie and I in particular, are driving a revised social media policy, because unfortunately, it has been abused in the past. And so we have to make sure that those databases aren't being used and sending things out to people unsolicited that they didn't actually agree to. So we have to be careful. I'd have to look into, to make sure that we're on okay ground to send those kinds of questionnaires out to people that signed up to our e-newsletter or something.
Right, the e-newsletter, if people assign, you know, when you send that out, people signed up to be okay to get that, right? And that's what, I'm not talking about attaching it to like a Facebook page, I'm talking
Mhm.
about just attaching it to one of those.
And you
those
opt in
emails.
or not.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
either survey
so,
or-
yeah, we can do that.
Maybe
We can do that.
I'm thinking procedurally, I know that you're working, I'm on the admin public works too, and I know that staff is working really hard with our consultant on guidelines, and it isn't finished yet. But I'm thinking if maybe this committee makes a recommendation to the council, and the council approves it, I would have a hard time, I mean, that might,
Approves what?
let's say this council makes this commission or committee makes a recommendation to the council that it provide a survey mail out a survey to the list pertaining to.
Well, we can, as long
Yeah.
as, I mean, if it's part of the e-newsletter,
Right.
we don't need council approval for that.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
gonna be the
I don't think
easiest
we
way.
do. I
Well,
mean,
I
if
think
we're already,
they-
if
yeah.
we're sending out an e-newsletter and people have opted into that, and I will talk to the folks that generate that e-newsletter, I can do that tomorrow.
Right.
And say, hey, if we put a survey and you can say yes or no, I want to take the survey, those who choose to do that, you
Yeah, I
know,
wouldn't see
can
a problem with
respond.
that either.
But as something that's already going out to the residents that are getting,
Right.
it's not a political thing, it's just saying, hey, we have a questionnaire we'd like you to fill out. That's okay, when you explained it that way.
Yeah,
When you
that's
take
what-
council.
We're okay on
Yeah.
that, we're okay on that, and that
And
doesn't
you're
take
gonna,
council.
you're gonna
approval.
reach,
But it's-
I mean, I think the ideas at the events is a wonderful idea, but you're gonna reach way more people.
Exactly. It'll be
on-
much more statistically significant.
Yeah, and you're gonna have data like that. You're not gonna have these pieces of paper to compile and
Yeah.
count and,
What about the council members in their email that they send out?
that, it could be attached to that too.
Yeah, like Joe Garitano, if I
Yeah.
get updates and letters from him all the time.
Right, there
They
are
could
that many
attach
that
something.
do what Mr. Garitano does, he's the expert about
Oh,
sending
yeah.
that out, I mean, he does a great job.
But I mean,
But all of them.
He's a
don't do that.
machine.
He is a machine, he does, I mean, he spends, when he sends those newsletters out from his ward, he spends an entire weekend putting that
Yeah.
together, so he
Yeah.
does great, but we don't have, everybody's not doing that.
Okay.
But for those who do, like
Right.
Mr. Garitano and maybe a couple others,
Yeah.
great vehicle,
And I would
so.
say if the city has a work product like that, then I would think that any council member who chooses, like, I have Facebook things, so I think if there's a city work project, I could put in there, but I don't know how that would help us tabulate them, though. I think we have to be careful, I don't know how much, I think we're gonna have to wait a little bit on the social media use policy to rely upon the council members to be putting it out. I mean, how do we tabulate that survey? Because it's official city business.
Why don't
What
we
would
do
we
this?
say?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we develop the survey?
That's what I was just
Okay,
thinking.
let's get the survey done, okay?
Then
Then
we
we'll
have
figure out the
something to
best
talk
vehicle to get it in the hands of the residents. Either it's on that, but let's get the survey put together, and the 10 questions or 15 questions, whatever you all decide, and then we'll figure out how we can do that and get it
Well, I
out.
think if, just
And I'll
putting
carry
my
that
2
ball.
cents here, a single link to a single survey source, rather than, I'm not thinking of people filling out scraps of paper, but handing out a link. Here, take the Wildwood survey, at the listening post and
2 to
stick
3
it in
minutes.
one
There
centralized
you
link
go.
and site, so for tabulation. And would it be wise to engage our marketing partners to figure out what the best vehicle is for that?
We can do that. We can do that. So
Yeah.
let's, and it can be all of the above. So if we just get that survey, then we can figure out what is the best way to get it out to the marketplace, if you will.
Sure. So
In
I'll
addition
call.
to that, though, and I'll just throw this out for you to think about and consider, is do you want to have an informational document that you hand out to people just about Wildwood? Okay, I mean, this survey says, what do you like, okay, but, would you all think it'd be beneficial to have, let's say, a booth or something at the, it's not gonna happen tomorrow night, but let's just say that we had that piece already, and we have a booth out there, and all these people come by, and you're handing out, something about Wildwood, and here's what's going on with the Better Together plan, and to inform people who may not be as knowledgeable as others. Do you see a benefit in that? Because if you do, then you'd want to start developing that piece of literature that then we can have printed up and have available to all these other events, and somebody's handing that out. And perhaps that could be done concurrently while we're developing and getting this information back, but we're still handing out something as it relates to Better Together. If you see value in that, you all decide, and then we could be working on that as well, perhaps.
Okay.
That could also be a link on or something on our webpage too, that explains all that. Whatever we come up with for that brochure could also be something on our webpage.
We already have stuff about Better Together and the proposed merger, so all the stuff that you
Yeah.
all develop would just be in addition, and we
Right.
can just throw that right on our website.
Right.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, I would bet, Stephen, right now that the majority of people residents of the city of Wildwood are not really aware of what the Better Together thing meant, how onerous it was.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Very
Really?
much so, yeah.
Well, I recall my step through this process, the initial reaction was, good, let's fix this fragmentation problem we got in this town. And with no more thought than that, I could have been a victim of voting yes on Better Together. It's only because I dug into it that I found the problem and the problems. So I think it's really important to take people to that next level of thought process as to what Better Together could mean, or a scenario like that.
How
Okay.
onerous it was.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
then
I mean,
that's something you may want to start thinking about, putting together, without taking a stand, that we can.
And if we don't
we
mention
can hand
Better
out.
Together, we're not even talking, about we just talk about the strength of remaining a municipality, and then we don't have to worry about, are we spending money against a particular proposal, even though that one's dead. But maybe we could think about, how we're strong as a municipality, and talk about proposed mergers. Proposed mergers as
Yes,
opposed
you want to get that in.
Yeah.
Because if you're just handing out about how great
Right,
Wildwood is,
right,
it's like,
right.
I know how
But-
great
but-
Wildwood is.
but what-
But you got to make sure that they
So you
understand
could
why
say,
you're
what do
handing it out.
mergers mean, I mean, because Better Together is sort of, a lot of people think, well, that's dead. And then you could argue that we're still fighting against the ballot initiative. But we just talk about municipalities versus proposed mergers. I think we have a window here to actually lay some groundwork for when they come back.
Great, yeah,
That's what
put
I'm
the
Educate
foundation
people,
down.
yeah.
I'm not really familiar with Municipal League and what they do there, what their charter is, and what they're working on right now. But I do think that it would be important that we don't counteract an effort on their end or work at cross directions with each other. It would be interesting to find out more.
They're working at a higher level than we are. The Metro is representing all 88, 90, 94, depending on what number you use, and they're at the legislative level, and Mr. Kelly is going out and talking to people. We heard him 2 weeks ago, and so forth, and that is, at least until most recently, but I think he's still, that's 100% of his job right now. You take this out of the equation, and their job is just to represent either Jeff City or whatever, and just pulling all the, whatever. The grassroots effort that we're doing here, they're not dealing with that. They're at a much higher level. So I think we do what we do here for the citizens of Wildwood. So we're doing what Chesterfield should be doing, and what Ellisville should be doing, and all the others in terms of informing our residents and keeping them informed. And that's about as far as we can go. We've got that point person, we've got that organization that's doing, and as the mayor said, when we kicked off this commission, let the politicos deal with that. It's not our job to say it's good or it's bad or whatever. That's not, our job is to try to protect what we can should, something that bad occur. Okay, and that's information, and that's all the other things that we've talked about. But the Metro League is the one that's out there really on the front lines battling the Better Together group. Okay, and representing all of us.
I think the big problem with this, I think the big gorilla problem with the Better Together was the fact that it just did an end around representative government. It wasn't that maybe some consolidations were good. Maybe they would be. Maybe a consolidated court system has merit. Maybe there are some benefits. So I think we want to be careful about broad brushing negative against some consolidation or maybe even an eventual merger.
Well, we can't say anything negative. That'll get us into trouble. We are only providing information. We cannot take a position one way or the other. Little bit, big bit. We can't, that's what somebody will come after the city of Wildwood for if we do that. So it's just gotta be, here's what's happening, and leave it at that.
There are some very matter-of-fact things that we can say that are not taking a position, but they're absolutely factual and true. If you read through the Articles of Incorporation, the Plan for Incorporation, there were no words minced as to the motivations of the group that formed Wildwood. And to your point, Jack, it was about zoning, it was about unresponsive government at the county level, and those things were specifically enumerated and very clearly stated in the 5 reasons of the formation of Wildwood and Incorporate Wildwood as documented, and then also the initial charter. So quoting those things and telling that story I don't think gets us in any trouble. That's a historical lesson on what caused Wildwood to form, and conveniently for us, it was unresponsive government at the county level that caused that. I think that in and of itself is enough of an indictment of the process that most people get from A to B without us having to say from A to B. So I think that would be helpful.
Will, were you here, how long have you lived in?
Not long enough.
There, when this was all going down, this thing about incorporating the county, the government who didn't want us to form, had these signs printed up, they were white with red letters. Wildwood won't work. And there were hundreds of them all over this area. And to try to dissuade the voters from voting for it. I was surprised when it succeeded. A judge had to step in and say the county government was overbearing in what they were doing, and they had to allow the people to vote. And begrudgingly, they did, and it passed, and not narrowly, it passed, I think, fairly robustly. And we don't want to lose that.
Maybe one way we could promote what we've got now is say, use those signs that say Wildwood won't work.
Yeah.
Only say Wildwood does work.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
if
point.
you look at the rankings on this niche site that ranks Wildwood as the best place in Missouri to raise a family, they've got other rankings. We're number 1 out of 355 best places to raise a family in Missouri. Best suburbs to raise a family in Missouri, we're number 1 out of 147. Best places with best public schools in Missouri, we're number 5 out of 261. And you just take that whole ranking list that Niche came up with, and then they've also got the national rankings. We might not make it as number 1 nationally, but we have some pretty good rankings nationwide. When you look at, instead of looking at 250 or 350 locations, they're looking at 15,000, 30,000, and we're up there in the 60 and 70 to 100 out of those 15, 30,000.
That's top percentile for sure.
Yeah, way up in the upper echelon of the locations nationwide, according to Niche. Now, I don't know who Niche is, other than that they're the author of this
They're
study.
people with really good opinions.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And
But
you all know that Lafayette was just recently ranked number 1 school
Right.
in the state of Missouri by U.S. News and World Report, and Eureka was voted number 4.
Right. So those kind of things could really be.
In fact, the 2 principals from those 2 schools will be at our next council meeting on the 28th, because we are
Good.
honoring them for their achievement.
But taking that on this survey and say, these are the things that we're best known for, locally in the state of Missouri and in the nation, what do you think are the best parts about Wildwood?
What are you most proud of?
What are you most proud of? Give them something to look at that says, you know, what other people say about us, and then ask them what they think about us.
Yeah, we ought to blow our own horn, there's no question.
Absolutely.
And this is only a time span of 24 years.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna say.
amazing. The sense of community that this
Yeah.
city has created in such a short period of time is nothing short of miraculous.
Because it won't work.
Yeah. Well, there's an old saying, show me your companions and I'll show you your future. And that is really important, where you live and who you associate with and who your kids go to school with and that sort of thing. It's critical.
So let me throw a proposal out there, and it may be something time limited. If we present something in white paper form, not anything graphic, unless any of us have a very strong graphic aptitude, I certainly don't. But if we presented content in white paper form that we could then give to the marketing team, could that be then gymmed up into something that looks presentable? Okay. So rather than try to put this together in group work format, which I know from 7th grade just doesn't work, what if one of us comes up with a white paper straw man, and then we can take a look at it at the next meeting and amend it as needed, and then provide it with an intent to, at the end of the next meeting, provide that white paper to the marketing group and Steve and Joe to put something together that's concrete. unless you think that, unless we need more urgent action in your mind.
It's up to the group. Okay, so the next meeting is going to be on the 30th, okay? It will take, you know, and then we're having a meeting then, okay, then after that, then we go to the marketing folks, okay, the marketing group that we use here at the city. It'll take them probably a week, maybe a little bit less. Well, they'll come up with something, and then it'll need to come back to the commission for you all to approve and that sort of thing. And then there's printing time, and then et cetera. So, you know, you might be looking perhaps 3 weeks out from now, you know, to have something that's actually ready to go.
Let me ask this question then. What can we and can't we accomplish as a committee via email as opposed to what we need to be assembled for?
You can do all of that. You know, you could come up with that, you could send it out by email. People can then respond by email with their changes, and you could compile it. And, you know, you can do all of this by email.
Okay.
You know,
You're talking over the records, concern.
right?
Do we have Terry Jones for the 30th?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Now, are you talking about the survey, or are you talking about a promotional piece?
Both. I would say that whatever we're gonna ask them, whether they value on the survey ought to match what we're informing them about from a messaging standpoint, is my opinion, but.
Does Wildwood already have like a points of pride kind of document, you know, like a brief, you know?
We do.
Can you send that could you send that out to all of us? And I mean, that could just kind of be a starting point.
Yeah,
You
there,
know?
I know that we've got something. I've seen
Yeah.
it somewhere along the line. You know, that basically lists.
Like the
you know,
bullet
kind of
points
bullet
of this
points
is why we're awesome, bam, 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 you know? I don't, you know, I can come up with a draft of like, you know, what might be good survey questions, you know, but I think I would like to see,
What the strong points are.
what those points of pride are, you know, the way Wildwood has, you know, described them.
We could have every point of pride and then say, do you think a merger would improve or degrade this?
I thought it was supposed to be
I don't wanna
using
go
the
there.
merger right now. Or,
So Molly, if we
For
get
the
you-
survey, should it be real simple with, say, short bullet items? You don't want to make it.
yeah, you want it to be
Yeah.
simple, you
Yeah,
don't want
simple.
someone to go,
People look
oh,
at it quickly.
read this,
Yeah.
you
Not-
know?
Yeah, brief, I mean, just.
If it's more than 3 minutes,
Yeah.
I'm not interested in a survey.
Just
Mhm.
narrow down to 3 to 5 questions with one.
I would say
open-ended
5.
answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to get them thinking about
yeah.
what we're offering, whether or
Yeah.
not we are, but what the community's offering.
And then the marketing team could easily create a survey monkey, or there's all kinds of those survey things to put out in the e-newsletter.
In fact, we do that internally, actually.
Yeah.
With that, we can track it internally and?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So I was gonna say, Survey Monkey involves costs, and I think council needs to, do they need to approve or can?
Probably not. That probably falls within my
Great.
purview.
Yeah, a good survey, though. We just did a survey in Babbitt Park Estates about solar projects. And as Board of Trustees, we did not want to make the decision for our 237 some odd residents or whatever. In the survey results, we got like over 80% response, which I was stunned that we got that kind of response. Now, a
That's
lot of
good.
people took the time to write on there and say, we are so grateful that you guys are asking us our opinion. And it was kind of a surprising result that we got out of it. People were very pro-environmentally friendly energy sources, and to the extent that 53% supported putting solar panels anywhere on the roof of a house, including roadside, which I was surprised. And I would not have guessed that as a trustee, but it was a democratic process, and I think people felt good about being heard. And that now that we've got some people that aren't happy with that decision, we've got a democratic process behind it to say this is how this decision got made.
Yeah.
So it was very productive, very useful, and I didn't anticipate the unifying effect it had in the comments I got from the people that responded in the subdivision. It was a very positive thing.
So Steve, if you can provide Molly just what we have currently.
Yes, I made a note, so I'll get with Kathy in the morning I know that we've got something that's gonna have those bullet points, so yes. So I can send that out to, like the entire group.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great for all of us. Then Molly, it's 5 questions. We'll leave those to you to craft.
It'd just be like a draft and we can talk.
Yeah, sure,
What do you
get
guys
something,
think?
just get started.
Yeah.
Yep.
First
Okay.
day.
So if we could shoot for, is Friday end of week next week reasonable for you?
Friday, end of the week. Yeah, that should be okay.
Great.
Yeah. Keeping in mind it's a draft.
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, that's,
Want to finish
I found that when you try to write these things by committee, it's hours and hours and nothing gets done.
That should be fine.
A white paper and a straw man is a lot better than we can all have
Yeah.
opinions, and so,
Mhm.
very good. So then hopefully we can agree on something by Friday into next week, and if we need to make a motion or vote on it, perhaps we can take care of it first thing at the next meeting, and then hopefully go to print on it, and then distribution. So, anything else as far as it relates to number 6, develop plan for informational marketing efforts? Okay, so miscellaneous next week, as we've said, we've got Terry Jones coming. Got some great questions for him, I'm sure we all do. I think that'll be incredibly enlightening, and looking forward to that quite a bit. And other than that, is there any other business anyone wanted to bring up, or any enhancements to what we've already discussed? Steve, do you have anything else?
I would just ask that you all keep Mr. Mann's family in your prayers and your thoughts, and his wife Frida, and just to send positive vibes their way, and just remember him well, please.
Or did they have any notion of what caused his death?
It was very sudden. He accepted delivery of a package at his front door. He turned, took 2 steps, and went down. So
That was this morning.
that was this morning.
Could have been a heart attack. or-
Could have been a heart
Aneurysm.
attack, could have been aneurysm, something that was very quick and very sudden.
Serious.
Well, with that, unless anyone has anything else, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Move second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well.
You're in the green team, I'm getting a
Thank
whole
you.
lot of knowledge.